This past year taught me something I don't think we really talk about, which is what it actually looks like to become a new version of yourself when your life is still very uncertain. Not when everything is working, not when there's proof, but when there's pressure, when things aren't fully figured out, and especially when nothing is confirming that you're on the right path. And what I've seen very closely this past year through my own life, and especially through my husband, is that this is the moment where most people either go back to what feels familiar, right? The old version of themselves, or they decide who they're going to be, regardless of what they're seeing. And that decision, friend, changes everything. So in this episode, I want to open that up and I want to show you what that actually looked like for us behind the scenes, right? When nobody's looking. But before we do that, I want to share something with you. On May 20th, which is a Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, I will be hosting a free live workshop called Step into Alignment, where I'm going to walk you through my align process and what it actually looks like to move from awareness into real integration. So if you've been in that space where you know something is shifting, but you don't feel fully grounded in it yet, this is exactly what we'll be working through together. I'm going to leave the details and the link in the show notes for you so you can just go ahead after you listen to this episode and go ahead and go there and click and register, and I will see you on the inside. Okay, friend, let's get started with this juicy topic. Welcome to Rewire to Align, a space where we break the patterns keeping you stuck and bring your brain, nervous system, and energy back into coherence. I'm Michelle Murray, neurospiritual alignment coach and creator of Align. This is where neuroscience meets spirituality and where you stop overthinking and start understanding what's actually driving your reality. If you're ready to see yourself clearly and finally shift what's been looping, you're in the right place. Hello, friend. Welcome back to Rewire to Align. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Michelle Murray, and every Tuesday we're here to talk about alignment. And this is going to be episode 77, and it's going to be in the neuro mindset category in the episode catalog that you can find in the show notes. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I am so happy that you are here. I hope that all the topics that we speak about here serves you in your journey to alignment. Okay, let's talk about identity shifts. Let's talk about it because we hear a lot about growth, about alignment, about, oh my God, let's become the version of ourselves. But very rarely do we talk about what it actually feels when you're in the middle of everything, when you're in that space, in that recalibration, in that liminal space, in the void, and your life hasn't caught up yet. And this past year, that was my reality. Last week marked 1 year since my cancer surgery, friend. I am so happy. I am so happy. I have 4 more years in remission. And also it marked almost a year since we closed our beloved Sardinia in South Beach. That was a restaurant for over 20 years. So there has been a lot of change in my life, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, honestly, a lot of that didn't fully make sense while we were in it. A lot of fear, a lot of everything, a lot of emotions. And this is something my husband and I have been moving through very deeply, not just individually, right? Because we all both have our own individual journeys, but also as a couple. And I think that's why this conversation feels important, because I'm not speaking about it from a place of having it all figured out. I'm speaking about it from actually being inside of everything, of that liminal space. So in today's episode, I want to open up to what this really looks like in my life, right? What it means to shift your identity in real time, in real life, IRL, how you begin stepping into a new version of yourself before your life reflects it, and why this phase, the one where things still feel uncertain, is actually where everything starts to change. So, to give you a little bit of context, my husband had been feeling for a while that he was complete with hospitality, with the restaurant industry. Complete. And I'm telling you, he has been in the industry for over 40 years. Yes, I know. He doesn't look like, but yes, he has been there for over 40 years. The guy is a vampire. He doesn't age. And 40 years is a long time to be in an industry. And even though he had built something beautiful, something successful, because Sardinia was with us for over 20 years, plus all the other years that he had been in other places working, there was a part of him that just knew that being where he was not where he was meant to be or to stay. He was ready to pivot. And I remember him coming to me and saying over and over again that he wanted to become a businessman, that he wanted to be a businessman, that he wanted to use the connections that he had built throughout the years in the restaurant, the way he naturally brings people together. He connects people. He's a connector and creates something different from that. You know, he's a 4-1 in human design. So he has that. And this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like one day everything was clear and the path made sense and wow, he was a businessman. No, it started slowly. Opportunities began appearing in his circle. I remember that once he kind of made his mind up and say, I want to become a businessman and I want to connect people and I want to do business like that, but outside of hospitality, then everything started to fall kind of in place for him. Like opportunities began appearing in his circle, new conversations, different kinds of connections. I mean, things open up here and there. It felt like life was responding to what he was already starting to see for himself, but nothing that felt fully stable or predictable yet, because we still had the restaurant. I think that, there was a little bit of fear to leave that part. And then life really accelerated everything, because I've told you this before in other episodes. If you want something, but you're afraid to fully decide what is going to happen, life is going to eventually make that decision for you and it's going to push you. Some people call it rock bottom, leaping without a net. It will push you to the edge so that you can finally move. So last year on May 7, I had my full hysterectomy from endometrial cancer, and shortly after, we made the decision to close Sardinia after over 20 years. And my friend, that in itself was a massive identity shift. So there was a lot happening all at once. Financially, there was uncertainty. Emotionally, there was a lot of pressure. And practically, we didn't have a clear sense of how everything was going to unfold. There was no, okay, this is the map and this is exactly how this is going to work. No, there was nothing of that. It was not perfect at all. There were moments of pressure, real pressure. I mean, when you have a partner that is not healthy, right, which is what happened to me, and then all of a sudden you're also having to decide to close your business, that's a lot of pressure. Moments where things felt super uncertain. We didn't know what was going to happen. There was not a guarantee or something solid to hold on to. I mean, he was carrying so much in that space, more than I could ever fully understand, because I am not him, But what's important for me to say here is that I never doubted him, never. We were living off of savings while we built, and we were in a lot of pressure in many ways from all sides. Everything was coming to us at the same time, but I never doubted him, and not even once. I was not the wife that went crazy. There was this, I don't know. I think part of that, knowing that everything was going to be okay, and the fact that I didn't doubt him, came from the fact that we've been through pressure before. I mean, we've navigated hard seasons. And one day I'm going to tell you the story of our IVF journey. Because of that, there was already a level of trust in how we move through things together. But beyond that, I could feel it because, as you know, I believe in energetics. So there was something very clear, very grounded energetically about the direction he was moving in, even if the external didn't fully reflect it yet. So even in the moments where there was a lot of pressure, especially financially, I mean, it's a family of 4, and where I could have easily gone back into trying to create security in ways that did not feel aligned anymore, going through my sickness and then feeling this pressure and then feeling the financial pressure. Yes, I asked myself, what can I do? But I didn't want to make decisions from a state of fear, because remember what I tell my clients and I tell you, you cannot make decisions from a dysregulated place, because then those decisions are going to just not work out eventually. So I didn't want to make those decisions. Even so, I still never ever questioned that he was on the right path. And I think that mattered more than anything, because instead of feeding the pressure, because I could have fed the pressure, but I've worked myself so much that I don't believe in feeding the pressure. So instead of feeding the pressure or reacting to the uncertainty, I met him with belief. I held that perspective with him the same way I do in my work, and the same way I held the perspective of what I was going through in regards to cancer. That's how I met him. So I did that so he could stay connected to that version of himself, to that businessman that he wanted to be. And he was open to it. He was willing to grow, to learn, to stretch into something new, even when it didn't feel fully comfortable yet. So it didn't feel comfortable. However, life threw him down the precipice. And you know what? He opened the parachute. He didn't think about it. He just opened the parachute. He stepped into that version of him. And I truly believe that combination, like his willingness, the support around him, because he was also surrounded by people who supported him, who encouraged him, who saw that vision with him, all of that. And the decision to keep showing up as that version of himself is what allowed him to stay in it instead of collapsing out of it. And you know what? The other day we were having dinner and I looked at him and I said, "Did you notice that you became the businessman you always wanted to be without even realizing it?" The process, or this year, pushed him so hard that he didn't even have time to think. Because remember, when we want to become a certain version of ourselves, our mind goes into place, and that's how we kind of start questioning our capabilities, right? Start questioning ourselves. But him, life pressured him so hard that he didn't have time to even think. He just had to put the shoes and go running, And that's an analogy that I'm bringing so that you can see it. He had to just step into that and go. And this is where I started to understand something deeper, because what I was witnessing wasn't just him figuring things out. It was him stepping into the businessman he had always known he was. And I think this is the part that's often missing in conversations around growth and alignment. Because we talk about awareness, I mean, that's talked a lot about realizing what we want, what needs to change, what no longer fits. But awareness alone doesn't actually change your life, amiga. In my work, this is what I call the integration phase. And this space where you are halfway in one place and halfway on another place is the recalibration space. It's the moment where you begin aligning with the identity of who you already know yourself to be before your life fully reflects it. And if you are in a season right now where things feel uncertain, where you're not fully seeing the results yet, this is usually the phase you're in. And it's not because anything is wrong, because we tend to look for results very fast. We are impatient and we want the results to happen now. But no, this is because something deeper is reorganizing. And what really stood out for me looking back at my husband process is that he didn't sit there overthinking this shift. He didn't wait to feel fully ready. He didn't try to fix everything internally before moving forward. He just did it. He was just being. He just stepped into it. There was pressure, yes, but there was also a decision to move in that direction. And at the same time, without even realizing it, he was being very intentional about what he exposed himself to. The conversations he was having, the people he was hanging out, like the people that was surrounding him, what he was listening to every day, whether it was teachings from Neville Goddard or Napoleon Hill, or simply being in environments that reflected that version of himself indirectly, without knowing, probably knowing but without realizing fully, he was curating his world in a way that matched who he already knew himself to be. Even waking up every day, I remember that waking up every day, I mean, after Sardinia closed, obviously he doesn't have a restaurant to go to anymore, but he wanted to keep pursuing the businesses and the connections that he had already started. So his friends, which I love them, I love you guys so much, told him, hey, Tony, why don't you come to the office? It will do you good. It will do you good to just come to the office and do your work from there instead of working from home. And my husband is Italian. He likes to dress up. He dresses very nice. So the fact that he was able to also step into that identity like that, which is a very simple thing, but is very powerful. When you dress up and you dress up as that version of who you want to be, you are stepping in it. And, he wasn't consciously thinking, I am rewiring my identity. He was reinforcing it. And this is where I think a lot of people get stuck. And I've seen myself here, and I am going to ask you, have you seen yourself in this position? Because we wait. We wait to feel ready. We wait for clarity, for a sign. We wait until things make sense instead of realizing that the shift actually begins the moment you decide, and then you start living, thinking, and surrounding yourself in alignment with that version of you. It's like the Bible said, right? The prayer, pray as if you already have it. That's what it means. And from a neuroscience perspective, this makes a lot of sense because your brain, and I've told you this before, is wired for what? For familiarity. It's constantly scanning for what feels known and feels safe, not necessarily for what's going to expand you or make you happy. So the more you start thinking, deciding, and showing up as that version of you that lives the life that you want, the more your brain begins to recognize it as familiar and your body, starts to settle in it. Less like forcing, right? It's not something that you have to force, but more like who you actually are. And energetically, right? Because I love the energetics in this process. It works the same way. Your life doesn't respond to what you want. It doesn't. It responds to who you consistently are, consistently. So when your internal state, your thoughts, your energy, your decisions starts to match that version of you, even before the results are visible, you are already shifting the trajectory of your life. And this is why this phase can feel so uncomfortable, amiga, because you're holding two realities at the same time, the one you're currently living in and the one you know is available for you. And instead of making that mean something is wrong, because we tend to do that, right? Or that is not working because of the negative bias our brain has, it's actually an invitation to stay with who you know yourself to be and stay long enough for everything else to reorganize around that. And if you're in this phase right now where you know something is shifting, but your life hasn't fully caught up yet, and you can feel that gap between where you are and who you know yourself to be, this is exactly the work we're going to be doing together on May 20th at noon. I will be hosting the Step into Alignment workshop, and I'm going to guide you through my align process to help you through this integration phase. So you're not just aware of what needs to change, but you're grounded in it and able to hold that identity in a way that starts to create real movement in your life. So if this resonated with you, if the story of my husband resonated with you and you can see yourself in this, just go ahead and click the link in the show notes so that you can register. I would love to have you and see you there. Beautiful soul. We cover a lot. I think that I went overboard with what we covered. And if I bring it all together in the simplest way, it really comes down to this. The phase where things don't fully make sense yet, where your life hasn't quite caught up to what you feel inside, that in between you're in is what I would call a recalibration phase. It's your system adjusting to a new way of being. And it's not a sign that something is off. It's usually the moment where everything is actually shifting. And in my work, this is part of what I call the integration phase within my align process. This is where you're learning how to hold that identity, and this recalibration is just your system catching up to it. And I know that sometimes we are very afraid about this stage, but when you are afraid, think about Tony. Think about my husband. Think about how he had to leap and just open the parachute. The parachute he didn't know he had. He didn't have time to think about it. He didn't allow the mind to come into play because he didn't have time. He just started being the person, that businessman. And I can see that so clearly now, looking back at this past year, watching him step into that version of himself, even when things were not fully certain, and now beginning to see how that's unfolding in his reality because it's been a year. So everything is falling into place now. And at the same time, recognizing how I'm now in my own next level of that process, not from confusion, but from a deeper place of knowing, of having lived this, of understanding what it actually takes to hold that identity before everything reflects it. And what this whole experience has shown me is that when things begin to move, when life starts responding, it's not random. It's that you've come into alignment with the essence of who you truly are, with that version of you that was always there, just waiting for you to fully stand in it. So if you're in that in between, instead of making it mean something that is not, just get curious about who you're being in that space, where you might still be waiting, where you might still be looking outside of yourself for confirmation, and gently bring yourself back to that version of you that you already feel inside. And choose it in the way you think, in the way you decide, in the way you show up, because that's what actually creates the shift. Remember, alignment isn't something you suddenly arrive to. It's something you return to in moments like this, in the in between, in the uncertainty, in the parts of your life that are still unfolding. And sometimes that's all that's happening. You're just becoming more of who you already are. I'm sending you so much love, and I look forward to seeing you inside the May 20th workshop.